Opening the center with a pawn thrust, this immediately contests central squares and prepares for rapid piece development. Instantly contesting central influence, knight develops to a natural, flexible square, setting up a web of possibilities. Asserting central dominion, white immediately contests the d-pawn and prepares a queenside expansion. Embracing the king's Indian defense, black signals an intent to fianchetto their bishop and contest the center from a more robust, queenside-oriented setup. Solidifying the kingside and preparing for a fianchetto, this move subtly contests the central light squares and invites a strategic battle. Solidifying the fianchetto, the bishop now claims diagonal dominance and prepares for eventual central challenges. Solidifying the fianchetto, preparing for kingside castling and potential central pressure. Securing the monarch is paramount, creating a safe haven for the king and preparing for queenside expansion. Solidifying the center and preparing for queenside development, a classic step. Challenging the center immediately, aiming to disrupt white's harmonious development and seize central space. Developing the knight to f3 solidifies central control, while preparing for kingside castling safety. Developing the knight to c6 solidifies the pawn chain's central grip and prepares for potential queenside counterplay. Solidifying the king's safety amidst the central pawn tension establishes a secure base for future operations. Solidifying the pawn center and preparing a kingside expansion. Solidifying the pawn center allows for gradual development and prepares for central pawn breaks or a controlled queenside expansion. Developing the bishop here creates a dynamic pawn structure, challenging white's central control and aiming for active piece play. Broadening influence across the queenside, this maneuver prepares for eventual pawn advances and potential piece redeployment. Repositioning the queen prepares a queenside pawn thrust, while also offering support to a potential knight jump. Developing the bishop to this diagonal clears the way for rook operations and pressures black's central pawns. Liberating the knight to e4 creates dynamic imbalances and forces white to reconsider the central pawn structure. The rook galvanizes the queenside, preparing to contest the open c-file and pressure black's castled position. Dismantling the pawn chain is a clever way to try and gain queenside activity. Capitalizing on the doubled pawns, white secures the bishop pair and a stronger central presence. Unsettling the knight's influence, black strategically repositions the bishop to challenge white's central pawn structure and free the queenside for future action. Opening the d-file creates immediate pressure, forcing black to reevaluate pawn structure and potential piece activity. Liberating the bishop from its pawn guard offers fresh diagonal influence, though it simplifies the queenside pawn structure. Reclaiming the open file with the rook immediately addresses the central tension and prepares for future queenside pressure. Shifting the knight to the queenside aims to challenge white's central pawn and open lines for counterplay. Shifting the knight to d2 aims to reinforce the e4 square and prepare a potential kingside advance, subtly altering the battleground's dynamics. Exchanging that bishop on g2 relinquishes important attacking potential and weakens the king's defenses further by opening the h-file. Safeguarding the king is paramount, though it exposes the monarch to potential future attacks from black's pieces. Unleashing the f-pawn creates central dynamism, aiming to destabilize white's pawn structure and seize initiative on the kingside. Expanding the kingside pawns decisively aims to restrict black's king and seize initiative on that flank. Opening the e-file decisively, black aims to activate the rook and challenge white's central pawns, creating immediate counterplay. Opening the center with this pawn push aims to shatter black's harmonious development and create lasting weaknesses. Unlocking the d-file for potential pressure, black initiates a critical pawn exchange to reevaluate the central structure and escape cramped quarters. Reclaiming the central file with the pawn opens aggressive lines and challenges black's control. The knight boldly ventures to f7, preparing to redeploy, potentially to e5, aiming to disrupt white's central control and create attacking chances. reasserting central control and preparing a kingside pawn storm. Reasserting central presence, this rook aims to contest the open file and potentially support a future pawn advance. Repositioning the rook to e3 aims to contest the central e-file, potentially supporting advances on the kingside or pressuring black's pinned knight. Reasserting central influence and preparing the queen for an active role, this maneuver seeks to exploit white's somewhat passive pawn structure. Aimed at activating the queen and pressuring black's undeveloped kingside, this maneuver also seeks to exploit the open e-file for future piece incursions. Bringing the rook to the open file anchors the defense and prepares for counterplay. Probing for weaknesses on the queen side, this pawn advance aims to disrupt black's defensive structure. Initiating a counter-expansion on the queen side, this maneuver aims to activate the rook and challenge white's central control. Unlocking the d-file, white initiates a bold pawn sacrifice to shatter black's defensive pawn chain and disrupt their king's safety. Sacrificing material here to open lines against the white king is a bold, tactical gamble. Recapturing the rook opens up the e-file, finally activating your heavy pieces after a positional battle. Reclaiming the queen allows for more active piece play and eyes potential tactics on the e-file. Launching an aggressive pawn storm, this move aims to disrupt black's king's defenses and seize initiative. Targeting the undefended king pawn, black ignites a skirmish while white's queenside remains exposed. Retrieving the rook to a more active central file to counter black's queen and potential kingside threats. Repositioning the rook to the open file aims to activate it and pressure white's queenside. Rerouting the knight to target the weak kingside pawns offers a dynamic counterplay. The queen now steps into a perilous position, a tempting target on an open file that will surely be exploited. Unleashing a decisive knight fork to shatter black's king defenses and seize the initiative. Relinquishing the bishop pair to gain a pawn on the queen side might prove a critical positional concession given the centralized enemy king. Opening up a crucial attacking lane, white bravely sacrifices pawn structure for king exposure. Reinforcing the rook's position on the open file, securing vital territory and preparing for potential counterplay. Unleashing the rook, white seeks to disrupt black's queenside blockade and create attacking chances. Trading queens here severs your attacking potential, opening white's rook to the center. The king's journey to safety begins, ushering in a new phase of the endgame. Initiating a potential queenside pawn, storm signals a desperate attempt to create counterplay against the exposed king. Solidifying the kingside pawn structure aims to secure the monarch, preventing immediate breakthroughs. Breaching the kingside defense, inviting a dangerous pawn storm to unleash after a dramatic exchange. Opening the h-file creates a critical weakness around the black king, promising penetration. Gambiting a pawn opens the kingside further, potentially unleashing unleashed attacking prospects. Activating the rook to the 7th rank injects immediate dynamism, threatening the weak pawn and opening lines for potential breakthroughs. Securing the rook on the open file is a prudent step, anticipating white's attempts to exploit the weakened kingside. An aggressive thrust. This rook's relocation aims to disrupt black's pawn structure and potentially initiate a mating attack on the queenside. Liberating the b-pawn from its restricted position injects crucial dynamism into black's queenside. Seizing the initiative, this pawn push aggressively targets black's exposed queenside, forcing immediate defensive concessions. Snatching the pawn opens the b-file, but your king remains quite exposed and vulnerable to further attack from the rook. Securing that advanced pawn on a4 now creates a powerful outpost, threatening to strangle black's queenside. Recapturing the rook opens the 7th rank, but allows white's rook to become very active. Pressing the pawns forward offers a vital outpost for the rook on the queen side. Recognizing the isolated king's exposed position, black maneuvers towards centralizing it for better defense. Asserting control of the open c-file now dictates the battle for the queen side. Seizing the open file offers a lifeline, challenging the imposing rook and demanding a strategic response. Probing for weaknesses along the open file now that the queens have cleared the board.